Welcome back to Taking a Page on Reiki, and this is Paige. I'm so happy to see you once again. I'm so glad that you are tuning in once again this week. It is a very interesting topic we are touching on today, and I'm glad to share. This might spark up some discussion, might spark up some controversial, but yes, we are discussing the topic specifically on the traditional Japanese Reiki and the Western Reiki. Okay, it's ever since I started on my Reiki journey itself. Okay, there's always been this big debate going on, like which Reiki is better. Is the traditional Japanese Reiki better or the Western Reiki is better? There's always this big debate. There's always this so-called, I would say there's a fight, but there is always this agreement, for different practitioners. I personally has learned Reiki from both system. Okay, I have learned my first Reiki achievement is with Yuko Sensei, and Yuko Sensei is she trained under Master Hiroshi Doi, who is currently the president of Usui Reiki Ryohogakai, or he changed it into Gendai Reiki Association. Yes, so I learned with Yuko Sensei before I learned with other Reiki masters as well, including Capuchin, who has a Reiki school on Instagram, as well as Alex, who she also run her own Reiki school. Yes, so yeah, I do think that I have a little bit of ground to talk about this topic, because I've personally experienced both traditional Reiki as well as the Western Reiki, and I do say I see merits in both systems. I see benefits in both systems, and there's no one system that is above another. Okay, before everyone jump on me, let me talk about more about this. Okay, but yes, just want to let everyone know, if you guys are hearing any children screaming, it's because it's a school day, and there is a school just right opposite my house over here, so you might be hearing some screaming and shouting, and it is normal day over here. So yeah, I did say that both system has its merit. Okay, and I also want to have everyone understand this, is that Western Reiki, despite of all the bad names it is actually a practice that is developed from traditional Japanese Reiki as well, and they are still system that is within the Western Reiki that is similar to the traditional Reiki practices, like 13 hand position is one of the very popular ones, the Gakusho practice, as well as aura cleansing, let's say, or maybe some of you learn about Kenyoku on how to cleanse your own aura, on your own energy field. So some of these practices are still preserved from the traditional Japanese practices itself. I also want everyone to understand that despite how much praise the traditional Japanese Reiki has gotten, okay, it is always being praised as the better Reiki system. Well, I would say yes, I love that, but I wouldn't compare both systems that way. But yes, some traditional Japanese Reiki practices or modalities, I would say that it certainly has gone out of date, or it's not suitable for us to use in this time and age. Some systems, some practices like blood cleansing method that's so effective, that is so helpful for a lot of healing. However, it requires direct body contact, like you have to touch skin to skin to really cleanse the blood, and that can be seen as inappropriate in this day and age, especially when you are practicing it on another person. If the other person is not someone you know, or if it's just your client, and when you are placing your hands directly on them and doing all the touches, the person might not feel comfortable, or in some cases you might get sued for that contact. as well. So yeah, like some of the practices, even though effective, even though they are helpful, they might not be very practical, you know, to actually practice or learn in this time and age. So without further ado, also I want to dive into, like, you know, what I like about the traditional Japanese Reiki, and also what I like about the Western Reiki practices. Okay, so yes, let's start with traditional Japanese Reiki. So what I see traditional Japanese Reiki, when I talk about that, when I you know, practice it, I find that it is an intuitive based practice. Okay, hand position definitely is introduced in the teaching, one of the teaching, but the teacher will always encourage you to follow your own intuition during a healing session. It will they will always encourage you to, you know, you do not need to follow the exact hand position, and there is no need to, like, you know, holding that certain position for, let's say, 5 minutes, 10 minutes before moving to another. Traditional Reiki practices is always very Reiki based, always intuitively based, always very heart based, and if you feel like there is energy stagnancy in one area, then you go over there and you know, allow Reiki to do what it does, and then you move. Once it's done, you move to the next one, and all of that, you know, there's less of a time constraint to all the session, and sometimes a session can last, you know, from 10-15 minutes to, let's say, 1 to 2 hours, depending on the person you're addressing, depending on the energy that needed help over there. Yes. Another thing that I personally like about traditional Japanese Reiki is that because it's more intuitively based, there is less limitation. Okay, at least from my experience of this, Japanese Reiki has less limitation. Like during my training with my teacher, there is no regulation that I have to fast for 21 days, which I heard is a very common practice for most of the Western Reiki. Like either you're fasting from food, or you are fasting from alcohol or recreational drugs for 21 days straight, like the day after or the day on your attunement, your first level attunement, you have to do the 21-day fasting, which is not, you know, enforced in the traditional Reiki practices. Okay, I also noticed that there is not much rules that comes with the practice. It's basically very heart based. If you feel right, you can do it. Like even my teacher, my Japanese teacher, during that, like sometimes I was like, you know, should I be drinking alcohol before and after a session? And to my Japanese teacher, there is no limitation. There's no limitation such as this. As long as you feel like, hey, if I'm drinking alcohol and I'm still feel you know, I'm not buzzed, I'm not getting drunk, and I can use Reiki, then you can use Reiki. There is this freedom over there, that you honor your body, how it's feeling, what is wishes, and you know, you just do what you feel right doing. Yes, I personally also find that traditional Japanese Reiki training focuses more on core teaching from Master Usui itself. Yes, the core teaching as in like making sure we are understanding the Reiki Kokai, you know, or allowing us to have a deep understanding, or, you know, understand and know, you know, the Reiki history. My teacher, with Yuko Sensei, that is my only experience with traditional Japanese Reiki at the moment. Yeah, she literally took out an hour or two of my training, my first achievement, or my first training, my first initiation, before she even performed an initiation on me. Okay, she literally sat me down for that 1 or 2 hour and explained to me thoroughly about the Reiki history. She like recite the whole thing and make sure that I understand the role of each teacher and what they did during the whole event itself. And then she also taught more on like Reiki Gokai and make sure that I have get a gist of it, which I personally find is very helpful, very useful, because if you look at it like the Reiki history, there is a lot of lesson that is offered within the story itself, and then there is a lot of lesson and wisdom that is offered within the Reiki Gokai itself as well. So traditional Reiki teacher do spend more time on explaining all of this so that we can know the roots of Reiki before we dive down into the healing part, before we dive down into all the hands-on or the sending energy, etc., all those things. Yes, traditional Japanese Reiki also encourage one to graduate, or in a way it's like to eventually cease out using a certain method, or in this case most of the time it's talking about symbols. I personally find that is a very helpful practice, because as you are progressing, more you're progressing with Reiki, you will eventually find yourself like, hey, I'm not resonating with using symbol with every practices I do anymore. And with Japanese Reiki, that it is actually an action that is encouraged, like they're calling it graduation from using symbol. And it's like eventually you will have that understanding that you do not need to channel the symbol to help you with your Reiki practices, with your Reiki healing. You can just use Reiki as its own, and that open up so much more room for a person to explore and set their own intention during a healing session. And symbol nowadays, for me, it is just a convenient. It could be like, hi, I do not have a lot of time, so I'm just going to infuse a power symbol on my crystal and cleanse it, and that's it. Otherwise it's like, hey, I do not have a lot of time, but I'm feeling like a certain tension or a certain ache, which actually signify stagnant energy in a certain body area, and I'm like, I do not have time to give it Reiki at this moment. Then I would just infuse a quick power symbol or other symbol that I feel that is aligned right now to the area, and just go about with the day. So it is, to me, I seeing traditional Reiki, it is a lot on intention, it's a lot on you're experiencing something, so you are intentionally using Reiki for to assist you to balance the energy there. So that I find is a very empowering part, instead of like we have to rely on let's say symbol to help us with every single thing. So yes, there are additional to that, yes, Japanese teachers, master teachers, they are mostly seeing the Reiki and the symbol, okay, as a tool itself, instead of that being the be all and all of Reiki. It's just a tool to assist us to make stronger Reiki on this, like the power symbol. It can be just infused to an area because it can bring in stronger Reiki, like a boost of Reiki over there. Or the mental emotional symbol, when you give to someone or when you give to yourself, it just gives you a boost of energy to help you to process with all those emotion or mental trauma that you're experiencing. But it is not the be all and all. It's not every session when it's related to emotional or mental trauma that you have to use the mental emotional symbol. What if the person the trauma that they are experiencing is more like a childhood thing, so you can actually use something else, or you can just use Reiki to transcend time and space and go back to the childhood and help them with the healing. So symbol is not a big thing. Like, I like that part about traditional Japanese Reiki. It's not the only thing in the practice. It's not like you have to know the symbol, otherwise you can't use Reiki. Like, I have friends who are only resonating with the power symbol, and she does not use any other symbol at all, not even the master symbol, and to her it is helpful because that give her more room to explore about every other aspect So yeah, like I really like that part about traditional Reiki. Also, I find that traditional Reiki focuses more on spiritual development. Not to say Western Reiki does not do that, but Western Reiki, from what I see, is a lot of focus on healing. It's like healing the physical body, healing the all the different traumas, etc. But for traditional Japanese Reiki, it is more towards like how Reiki can help you to to connect to a deeper part of yourself, to, in a way, it's like to ascend, but also like to bring in those wisdoms you have into this physical body. So I really like that part about it, as well as one of the last thing that I really like that I have written down over here is Japanese Reiki always emphasize on, if you know how to do it, you know how to do it. You do not need to have, let's say, symbol. You do not need to have a certain method. You know how to do it already. Awesome, try and do it. And they always encourage that this, like in Western Reiki, I'm seeing more of a regulation over there. It's like you have to follow this step, this step, this step, this step. Like let's bring back symbol, okay? Like even like using of symbol, if you're using the time and space symbol, so to activate it, you have to use, like, let's say, power symbol, emotional symbol, power symbol, then going into the time and space symbol and closing it with power symbol. During the Japanese Reiki, they'll be like, if you already know how to set intention to send Reiki across time and space, you do not need symbol. You can just send, and that's it. And yeah, it's like I like that freedom over there. I like that intuitive base, and also trusting your own intuition part of it. It is more empowering from what I'm seeing for traditional Japanese Reiki. Okay, with that being said, okay, let's move on to what I like about the Western Reiki practices. So for Western Reiki practices, I do see them as more structural, and hence I like that they are more structural, they are more hands-on practice, they are detailed 13 head position, they are detailed 7 chakra position, and they have letting everyone know like you have to stay on each position like 5 minutes or so. So there is more of like structure, and with structure, right, this is very helpful for new beginners, especially if you are unable to trust your own intuition yet, or you still do not know how to trust your own intuition yet. Then Western Reiki would be very helpful for you. There's also very detailed instruction on how to use symbol, what to use symbol for, and how to channel our own symbol, etc. There's always all this teaching step by step when it comes to Western Reiki. Also, what I like about Western Reiki is that it's always encouraging us to incorporate more energies to assist. Like we can ask for help from divine beings, like the archangels, like the deities, like the higher self, etc. So it is fun to play, and it actually allows you to open up so much different room for different energy to come in to assist with the healing. And I personally love to work with other beings as well. I do like to work with like Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael. I do call in mystical creatures like the phoenixes, like the dragons, the nightingale frogs, etc. I do channel them in, and getting them to assist me on a healing session, whether it's for myself or for another person. I also like for Western Reiki, there is a lot of incorporation on various tools as well, like apart from deities and other divine beings. Western Reiki to talk about incorporating tools like crystal, like tarots, like some even combining Akashic records and Reiki healing, and do them together. And I find that is very awesome, that actually allow one who is probably have a mastery in another practices already, that they can actually incorporate those practices into Reiki itself, and have more rooms to play with that. Traditional Reiki, we do not see much of that. It's more like, you know, if a person is Reiki teacher, they'll be doing Reiki healing and Reiki healing, that's all. They do not dabble into most of them do not dabble into other practices like tarot, like crystal, etc. So yeah, from my observation, traditional Japanese Reiki can pose a challenge to new beginners because the system is less concrete structure. Okay, they do have some very helpful and powerful practices, like Hatsureho is one of my favorite, and it literally helped me to connect with Reiki so much better. Like Kenyoku, okay, that is very helpful for me as well when I first started. Tanten Keiruku Ho is very helpful when I first started until right now. I'm still using Tanten Keiruku Ho all the time. But all these practices, right, in a way it is you know, from my personal opinion, it can be oversimplified. Like Hatsuriho is just a meditation, and if you are not trusting yourself, if you are lack of that self-trusting for your intuition, then you might have an issue about you know, the practices that you are doing, because it's oversimplified. And when it is simplified, our mind can't grasp that we are actually learning something, that we are actually you know, channeling something. Human minds, okay, or maybe it is a programmed human minds, that we always feel like, you know, to achieve something great, like a greatness, something great like healing modalities, it has to be challenging. And when it comes to traditional Japanese Reiki, there is not much of a so-called challenges in terms of you know, in terms of practices. It is always very simple, very easy. Hatsureho is just meditation, you know. Even like Kenyoku is just like a few swap of your hands. So if you are new beginners, you might be doubting like, hey, are these modalities, are this method really helpful on my journey? Are they really helping me to get to know Reiki better? Yeah, that might be a question you might ask yourself often. I did. So yeah, it's like there is lack of concrete structure, and you know, when you are lacking of concrete structure, then one might feel like they are not learning something or achieving something when they do the practices, and that might be discouraging. Yes. So yeah, this is where I personally feel that Western Reiki practice can come in as aid, as they are simplified and systematic practices. So-called simplified as in there is step by step. Okay, there is step by step so-called systematic practices from the Western Reiki practice that allow one to feel like, hey, they are actually doing something, they are actually achieving something when they follow all the step by step, instead of, you know, there is no concrete structure. So it's like, do what you feel like doing. When you tell someone who has always, you know, always been following step by step to do what you feel like doing, that person will actually get lost. And I have to say, all of us are actually very accustomed to following the step by step, because that is the way that the school is teaching us. Like, school is always teaching us that, you know, you have to follow step A, then step B, then step C, and that is how, you know, Western Reiki can come into aid. Western Reiki is more similar to the practices or the way that we are usually operating, and hence it can seems like it is, or it is more useful or more helpful, you know, on the Reiki practices itself, especially for new beginners. But yes, for intermediate and advanced Reiki practitioner, however, I would have to say Japanese Reiki practice can actually provide more room for growth and empowerment, especially their encouragement on, you know, intuitive healing, to eventually cease out using like symbols or, you know, a certain practices as you go. Okay, this is a very good thing for you know, intermediate to more advanced Reiki practitioner to dive into, because that is the time you are able to explore. When you are intermediate, when you are going to advance, you are probably more trusting of yourself and your intuition, and this is the time that you can, you know, test where your limits are. You can actually test out where where is your strength and where is your weaknesses, and you can actually focus on, you know, developing what is your strength, and maybe even develop your own methods on doing something because you are having such a good understanding of it. And yeah, like it also allow people to grow in an empowered way, as I mentioned, so that the person do not have to rely on Reiki, or you know, to rely on a certain symbols to get their healing done. It just is like Reiki is a big part. Like for Japanese, traditional Japanese Reiki, they encourage like for Reiki to be a part that is like it is a part of your life. It is not a separate thing. It's not just you are using it just for healing. Japanese traditional Japanese Reiki is your everyday life. It's from when you wake up, how you are like breathing, you know, are you breathing in Reiki, are you visualizing Reiki into your life, you know, or when you shower, are you bringing in Reiki? That is the whole practice, like a conscious practice on every single day life. And a lot of teachers, a lot of practitioners, traditional Japanese Reiki practitioners, we eventually get used to, like, you know, Reiki is just part of life. It is not a separate of it. It is basically it, like, you know, it is like energy is part of life, and Reiki is part of life. I personally do use both systems still. I use the traditional Japanese Reiki system. I do use the Western Reiki system, and I teach both in my classes, so that those who resonate with one system but more than the other, they can actually swap, or they can actually you know, scale according to their own preferences. And yeah, like if you are interested to, you know, study Reiki with me, I am having a group class you know, coming up soon. You can check it out on my website to know the dates, etc. Yes, I also want to emphasize once again, I do think that there's no system that is above the other, or no system that is greater than the other. They are just different, and for different people they might be more aligned with one system than the other. And of course, as you grow, you might find yourself you know, growing more aligned to one system or another as well. I also want to add this part is that there's no lineage better than the other, because part of the debate on, you know, traditional Japanese Reiki system is better or Western Reiki system is better, there is also the debate on lineage. I have to say there's no such thing as lineage in so-called Japanese, or you know, in the whole Reiki system. Lineage is basically you're following which teaching. Are you following the teaching from Master Usui more purely, or are you following the teaching from Master Takata, who has actually simplified and bringing more structural practices to Reiki itself? Like, yeah, like I do not believe in the superior of you know, lineage, Reiki lineage itself. And yeah, I'm going to talk more about that next week, as we are touching into Reiki attunement, Reiki initiation, all that. So if you are, you know, resonating with today's topic, if today's topic, you know, bring you any insight, any helpful information, anything at all, you know, please feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and leave me a comment on how, you know, how the video has helped you, or how any previous video has helped you so far, or you know, your personal opinions on Eastern or Western Reiki. This debate, have you have any you know, opinions that you'd like to share? I'm looking forward to hear about them as well. So yeah, looking forward to see you guys next week, and till then, bye.